but I am now recording.
Great.
Okay. Hey, this is Eddie Muller, and I am here with my friend, one of the preeminent writers and directors in cinema today, Mr. Alexander Payne. Alexander, where are you joining us from today?
I happen to be in Greece. I'm 2 hours west of Athens.
Fantastic. That's a good way to wait out the pandemic.
Not too bad. Well, Greece has been relatively untouched by the pandemic, knock on wood so far. Can't get cocky, but it's nice to be in a place where you walk around towns and people aren't wearing masks and you don't want to, punch them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the reason I've gotten in touch with you today is because I'm going to be showing one of my favorite films on Noir Alley coming up very soon, The Breaking Point. And I always, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I always associate you with this movie because years ago, I had tried to find this movie to screen it at my Noir City festivals and could never do it. And you were the guy who sort of got it pried out of Warner Brothers for a series at UCLA years ago. So can you just give me the background on that? Because you were a safe.
It's one of my favorite films too, and I'm very proud to have played a very small part in getting it, re-seen and appreciated by people. I came to the film about 15 years ago. I woke up from a nap and I turned on Turner Classic Movies and caught the tail end of this film. And I had no idea what it was. I just thought, oh my God, what is this movie? What is this movie? And so I had to, at the end, I don't even know if Robert Osborne came on to say what it was. I think it just went straight to bumpers or something. But I finally figured out it was Michael Curtiz's The Breaking Point. I'd never heard of it. I went, oh my God, I got to see the rest of this movie. So I finally did somehow. And then I wound up programming it twice because I wanted to see it projected. It was merely because I wanted to see it projected. I was the guest director of Telluride in 2009, and it was one of my picks. So I could just see it projected. And then Curtis Hanson used to host a series at UCLA. I forget what he called it, but my favorite movie, or I forget what it was. So I picked The Breaking Point.
I think that was it.
Yeah, something like that. So I could see it projected again and also keep introducing it to people. And then Curtis and I had a lovely discussion about it afterward. But I think because of my having programmed it at Telluride, Peter Becker at Criterion got interested in it, and then I think started making inquiries with Warner. And somehow, because of the 2 times that I programmed it, people were able to get the elements, whatever they were, out of Warner and get it out there and seen. And I'm very happy about that. It's an unbelievable movie.
Yeah, and I think the Film Foundation
yes,
actually played a major role in restoring the film. And I know that there were rights issues involved with it. That's kind of why it slipped between the cracks, because something to do with the Hemingway estate. I'm friends with Julie Garfield, John Garfield's daughter, and I remember when she did a documentary for TCM about Garfield years ago, they couldn't get clips from The Breaking Point, and it killed her because she had said that this was Daddy's favorite film. Of all the movies he made, this was his favorite film. And it did really break her heart that they couldn't include clips from the movie. But apparently all that has been cleared up, and we're going to be showing it. So let's talk about why this film is so great. I think some people who watch the movie might not immediately recognize that this is To Have and Have Not. It's the same basic, based on the Hemingway novel, but it bears no relation really to the Howard Hawks film.
Yes. And I got to tell you, when I watched the movie, and I've seen it several times, I don't really think about Hemingway that much. I mean, yes, he's there, and his dialogue, his punchy dialogue is there, but I just see that extraordinarily well-directed film. There's not an ounce of fat on it. Every shot has a place. It's whatever word you want to use: crisp, taut, muscular, concise, perfect in a way. I think this film is really a lesson for filmmakers and really how to make a movie. Every shot has a beginning, a middle, and an end. For film fans and practitioners like myself, I think Michael Curtiz and Raoul Walsh always provide very good examples of classical filmmaking. I mean, I would have to live 4 lifetimes to reach their level of expertise. And
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just think together with, that he made what's largely considered the most perfect film of the Hollywood period, Casablanca. It's just no coincidence. And you look at, Curtiz films in general, every shot bristles with elegance and invention and interest in what the characters are doing.
Yeah.
And then you've got the fantastic cast, not just Garfield, but Patricia Neal and Phyllis Thaxter. And I have a soft spot in my heart for Phyllis Thaxter. And
Is she great? She is so fantastic in this movie.
She's kind of, in a way, she steals the movie, in a way. Just because
I understand, yeah.
Just how she represents the good side of man and the good side of John Garfield's life and choices, the moral side. She's very well cast and gives a really beautiful and heartbreaking performance, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting that you talk about Curtiz. He was so, his reputation was a camera director, that he used the camera so perfectly, but yet the performances in his films are extraordinary, given that he was considered to be kind of a tyrant on the set. But the acting in this movie is beyond the pale. It is so incredibly good, top to bottom.
I think in general, when we talk about certain directors who are known for their style, their film style, at the same time, many actors in those films have never give better performances. When was John Wayne ever better than with John Ford? When was Toshiro Mifune ever better than with Kurosawa? When was Ryan O'Neal ever better than with Kubrick? And on and on and on. So I think, the flashy kind of style-directed directors very often are magnificent elicitors of performance. Because the visual style has to includes a certain rhythm. The rhythm in film is extremely important, and the rhythm of this film is unbelievable. It's just like a metronome. It's just very beautiful. And performance has to conform to the rhythm of the filmmaker and the visual rhythm of the film. So somehow I think it's all together.
Yeah, no, that's a great observation, because all the players have that beautiful rhythm, and what Garfield does with Phyllis Thaxter and Patricia Neal are very different. But man, their scenes are incredible. And then when the 3 of them finally meet,
that's a great scene.
Oh, that's scene
breaks your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just speaks volumes. That's one of the best scenes I think I've ever seen in a movie, and the way Garfield plays that. So stupid, but not really stupid. He's kind of pretending that he doesn't know what's going on. Right. It's just magic. And another thing that I love about this movie, and when you mentioned that you saw it the first time at the end, I mean, I hope that people who are watching this have already seen the movie, because it's a spoiler to say that this film has probably the most heartbreaking final image of any film I've ever seen. And I have to give John Garfield total credit, because I don't know if you've read the book, Hemingway's novel.
I have not.
It is not a pleasant book. It has a casual racism to it that is really off-putting. Garfield, or Harry Morgan, the character in the book, has 2 shipmates who are both just pig-headed racists. And so it was Garfield's idea to make his pal black and have Juano Hernandez play this part. And it puts a whole other level into this film that makes it so superior to the book, in my estimation. Yeah. And that was all Garfield. And I think Juano Hernandez just gives a fabulous performance in this movie.
And that's actually his son, who plays his son in the film.
Yep.
But on the other hand, Curtiz had just worked with Juano Hernandez on Young Man with a Horn earlier that year. So I don't know what the connection there was. Maybe it was Garfield's idea to make him African-American, and then Curtiz perhaps suggested Juano. They just had that collaborated on the other picture. By the way, that's another reason that makes me jealous of and hate Curtiz, is that this magnificent film is only one of three he made in 1950. Young Man with a Horn, Breaking Point, and Bright Leaf.
Yeah, yeah. Would you have liked to have worked back then, like in a
Yeah.
studio system?
Yeah, yeah. The only thing it would have been my dreams are to have worked with comic films in the 20s, and then to have worked for Warner Brothers. Because I don't know about for you, but in general, the big studios, whenever I see the WB, I know I know there's something good waiting for me. It was my favorite studio. The only thing that makes me not long to have lived and worked then is arthroscopic surgery that we have now. The medical advances we have now. But
Yeah.
I think every modern director really dreams to have had access to that level of craftsmanship and speed, and to have that industry supporting you. Because again, it's not just Curtiz in this case, but he's got Ted McCord as a DP, and he's got a terrific editor and a fantastic. Oh, by the way, I looked up the production designer, called him art director, production designer. His career, he worked with Curtiz and Raoul Walsh at Warner Brothers, and his last film was The Wild Bunch.
Wow. And his name's escaping me right now.
Edward Carrere, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Okay. Wow. Yeah,
Huge
it would.
career.
It's amazing, really, to think about how, if you were a director back then, you didn't have to. You weren't out hunting for money. It's just a huge,
right.
That you would just like roll out of bed and have all these incredible craftsmen at your disposal to shoot that day. I mean, it's like a dream come true, right?
Yes.
Oh well. Anything else about the breaking point that you find particular? You mentioned McCord. I think his work on this film is absolutely spectacular. The shipboard stuff in the beginning, when they're smuggling the immigrants aboard, all that stuff is just gorgeous. And then the final shootout is amazingly great.
Starting in the fifth, look, he had shot a lot of Westerns, and of course he famously shot Treasure of Sierra Madre. But for my money, when you get to like 1950, 51, which happened to be two of my favorite years for film anyway, if you look at films put out in 1950 and 51, I think there's just an endless treasure trove of movies. But there's a genuine realism somehow, like more location shooting and relying on more natural light. And, like for me, this is a bit of a distant companion piece to say, like Border Incident, Anthony Mann's Border Incident the same year. And I have to think of some more. But, people point to Sweet Smell of Success 7 or 8 years later as one thing. Wow, such natural lighting and, James Wong Howe's photography. But I think you see a lot of precedents earlier. And I mean, you've seen a lot more 40s and 50s films that I have, but there's a naturalism started to, along with the stylization, of Hollywood lighting in general, and then of course noir lighting. But a picture like this which has a lot of exteriors and interiors with big windows, like that bar club down in Newport, where they shot, that has the big windows. Really groovy locations, and allowing natural light, or at least what seems like natural light, to take over. It's just very beautiful to watch.
I think that was kind of McCord's specialty, was he and Alton. You mentioned Alton from who shot Border Incident. They had this incredible way of, they would make what was natural somewhat theatrical. It was real, but yet they enhanced it in a way that made it even more dramatic. That's certainly true of what Alton did in Border Incident. And I think you see that in The Breaking Point as well. McCord, whether he's doing it with filters or something, but he is getting those clouds to really pop, and the reflections off the water. It's magnificent stuff that he's able to do in this film. So you're absolutely right. They're moving outdoors to shoot in real locations, but he's still utilizing some of the artifice of the
Yes,
studio
of course.
to enhance what's naturally out there, which I think is really, it's kind of bewitching in a sense. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, is this reality or is this hyper reality? I'm not sure. It's great. It's absolutely great. And I do want to
What?
just say that I think Patricia Neal gives an incredible performance in this movie because she is a real femme fatale. You see that character so often in movies, but they don't really seem to be a real person. They're like some timeless viper who's come, but
Yeah.
she's like a real woman. And she is using the tools at her disposal to try to survive. And
Yes.
she is a very, very believable femme fatale in this movie. And the fact that at the end of the film, they humanize her so beautifully in that scene with Garfield where they go back to her cabana or whatever it is, and like
Yeah.
nothing happens. Again, that scene is a masterpiece in
Yes.
like male female relationships. Like, I wanted it to happen, it's gonna happen, and then she's so hurt that he doesn't make his play for her.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, yeah, great
She
stuff.
was in she was in all three of those Curtiz films in 1950. She was in Young Man with the Horn and also Bright Leaf.
Oh, he knew a good thing when he saw it.
She was busy. Yeah. What do you think about because the more times I watch it, the more I question the voiceover. It begins with voiceover. There's voiceover in the middle as he's hatching the plot. Should I do it? Should I not? As he's planning what to do when the criminals get to his boat. When I watched the movie, I imagine watching it without that voiceover, and it's kind of better. I don't know if I would like to go back and dig out the screenplay and see whether the voiceover was contained in the screenplay or whether they added it later.
Interesting. Because, a lot of times they forced the voiceover on the film
Yes.
because they just weren't convinced that the audience would know what was going on. In this case, I think most of the voiceover is him discussing his internal turmoil. It has less to do
Yeah.
with plot and stuff. So I think you're probably right. It would probably be fine without it. It's funny. Have you ever? I would love to go back and redo The Killing, Kubrick's film, without the voiceover, because I feel like audiences could follow
Yeah.
it without any problem. If you just had a clock, if you just put a clock on the screen, which became a common technique, right? Then you'd know, oh, it's 10 a.m. And you wouldn't have to have that really droning
Yeah.
voiceover.
Announcer. He's like a radio announcer.
Yeah. Art Gilmore, I think it was, that did it in
The great Art Gilmore.
yeah.
So what are you going to say? Well, I guess you don't have to tell me here, but I'm curious to know I always love the introductions to your films even sometimes I'll turn into your show Noir Alley, not even because I necessarily want to see the film, but I want to see what you have to say about it. I watch your intro front and back, and so I'll be curious to know what you're going to say about this one.
It just has to do with how the film, I mean, generally I try to do those things. So the intro tells you what led to the film being created. And then the outro tells you, whether the film was a success, why it flopped, what its fate was out in the world. It was just interesting because the story that I love about this one is that Hawks and Hemingway were on a hunting trip or a fishing trip or something. And that's when Hawks said, I can make a good movie out of your worst book. and Hemingway says, oh, really? And what would that be? And he said,
Yeah.
that piece of crap, To Have and Have Not.
Oh.
And he ended up doing it. But then Ronald McDougall, the screenwriter, who was kind of hot at Warner Brothers at that time, right? He'd written Mildred Pierce and a couple of other Crawford things. And he said, we've never actually made To Have and Have Not, because Hawks's film is certainly not the book and we own it. So why don't we just do a version that's for real? And he always wanted Garfield. They talked about Jimmy Cagney. They talked about Errol Flynn. I think they even talked about Kirk Douglas, which would have, Young Man with a Horn and the whole thing.
Yeah.
But Garfield was insistent that it be Michael Curtiz, because he was his good luck charm, because he had done Four Daughters with him, was his
Yep.
breakthrough. And you know, he knew. And Garfield was essentially the producer of this film. I mean, it's his movie. He picked everybody. I think he pretty much cast the film.
Wow.
And the last thing I want to mention, because as a director, you will appreciate this. I love at the end of the film when the big scene arrives and is he going to survive or not? And they say they have to cut off his arm. He told Curtiz, leave the camera on Phyllis Thaxter.
That's an amazing thing. That's a remarkable thing. I think about that every time I watch it, that it's her scene. He lets it be her scene. Because I'm sure they shot coverage of Garfield. So he told Curtiz, make it her scene.
Yeah, it's her. This is her. This is her through line in the picture culminates right here, right? And I mean, that's something for an actor, a star like that, to say, you know, it's not just my story, it's her story too. And this is the scene that pays off for her. I thought that was just fantastic.
Yeah, that's notable. You notice that doesn't cut to him in that scene. Wow, what a great story. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. So we should do this more often.
I'd love to. I'm yours. Nothing would make me happier.
Okay, good. Well, I'll find something else for us to talk about, and we'll do it. So don't go away, because I'm going to stop recording, but we're not going to be done. So thanks so much for this. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope everybody enjoyed hearing us yammer on about The Breaking Point.